And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Before we leave you for the turkey holiday, the Bahamas, Mar-A-Lago, Qatar, all locations that are in the news lately involving Trump, FTX, and the World Cup. We thought we'd bounce around today. You actually thought of a question before the show.
I'm ready. I got a good one.
Do you want to tease it? Do you want to tease the question?
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I don't know how to tease it without giving it away. It's about Mar-A-Lago. There's obviously news about Trump all the time, but what this could lead to future elections, and maybe Mar-A-Lago's bad for the Democrats.
Keep running with it. Go ahead, because I have not heard this yet. So
okay. So here's my theory. Because I was just reading something online, because there's stuff every day.
Okay.
And it said a former Department of Justice solicitor, and a solicitor is an attorney, said that a Trump indictment is essentially open and shut case.
Okay.
And maybe multiple indictments, whatever. I think the guy one of his quotes was, "If you did this or I did this, we'd already be in jail."
Okay.
So just and when Democrats read that, I would suspect that they're like, "Yay, woohoo!" That's what. Just like Republicans were when Roe versus Wade got kind of repealed.
Okay.
But then we follow 6 months sooner, and as we warned here on the Midday Show, this could be the one rallying cry that really stopped the red wave, and the red wave never came. If that's why, if it was election denial, who knows what it was, but
sure.
the Roe versus Wade.
Statistics would say abortion rights was the number one thing that people had on their mind at the polls.
It certainly affected it. Okay. So right now, as we sit here right before Thanksgiving in 2022, the Republican Party is at odds with each other. Are we for Trump? Are we for DeSantis? And those, because there's only two of them, it makes it a very clear rivalry. It is Michigan, Ohio State. It is North Carolina, Duke. If Trump gets indicted and then he can't run.
Okay.
Well, okay, let's continue. But I did that wrong. Let's keep going the normal way. If they go the normal way, one of them's going to get the nomination and one of them's not.
Sure.
And again, at that point, once you've been so angry at the other for so long, if DeSantis gets the nomination, do some Trump supporters stay away from the polls? They won't go vote Democrat, but do they just not vote? Okay. Or vice versa? But now, if the Republicans, even the people who really, really support Trump, if this indictment comes down, even though by it's a legal judicial body that has no political affiliation, if the indictment goes down, the Republicans are going to blame the Democrats.
Okay.
And if Trump can't run, then won't that be an artificial, I say artificial, won't that be a rallying cry for the Republicans, even the ones who are for Trump? Because right now, I think there's going to be a little section who is going to be mad because their guy didn't get it and they're going to stay away.
So I think it's an incredible point. I think that what you're implying, more so than a rallying cry, I think what you're saying is that the decision is made for the Republicans, and that will almost, not a rallying cry, but that will allow the relationship to basically, there is no question. Like if you're a Trump supporter and you really are a diehard Trump supporter, there is no kind of like, well, why would I vote for DeSantis? Well, you're going to vote for DeSantis because the decision was made for you.
Right. And now you have to because of those jerks over there.
You can't be mad at your own party for the fact that DeSantis.
Exactly.
It's a very, very good point. I think you're onto something. Not even a side note, something that I want to mention to this concept, to the idea of would it be bad for the Democrats if Trump is indicted or for whatever reason Trump can't run? I keep trying to explain this to people. And I think it's hard for people to understand. There are
you saying people are dumb?
I'm not saying people are dumb. I'm saying that
it sounded like people are dumb.
No, people aren't dumb. I'm saying people at times have a hard time putting themselves in the shoes of somebody else. I think it's hard for people who are not like Trump supporters. Like if you're not Team MAGA, essentially, I think it's very, by the way, I just want everybody to know, I just gave you my full attention for like 10 straight minutes, and I'm putting you on blast right now.
I got a
You're
text.
fine. Do
Hold
what
on.
you got to do. Do what you got. It's like having a show. This is what I imagine it would be like having like a show with a Gen Xer with a phone. That's essentially what it's like. No, thankfully. So I think what people struggle to understand is if you are a Trump supporter, if you're Team MAGA, there's a huge faction of people that do that, not because they loved Donald Trump in 2010. Like most Trump supporters didn't watch his television show.
Right.
Like most Trump supporters never thought Donald Trump was like this thing to aspire to be. I think what people miss out on the left and people who don't understand it is that this all started. Most of these people decided to support him because they didn't love him, because they despised politicians in the other side. And so I think the hardest thing about having these conversations, they're like, a Trumper is going to vote for Trump. If Trump is on the ballot, yes, that is 100% true. But this idea that supporters of Trump will not vote for DeSantis or that they won't show up to the poll, I think people forget that the main reason that they got on the Trump bandwagon wasn't Trump. It was the politicians and drain the swamp, and it was they could not stand the other side. This concept of like the elitist, right? The educated, like all of those things. And I think people have, now that we're like 6 years into this, I think people have forgotten that. I think there's this idea that if you're a Trumper, you're a MAGA supporter, and like you couldn't possibly vote for DeSantis if they feel like Trump got cheated out of it.
No.
They're gonna show up and vote for DeSantis.
Well,
they're gonna show up and vote for whoever that candidate. Now, whether or not they win is another conversation. I don't know.
But they're not all. And if you talk
most,
but if you talk 1 out of 25, that's 4%. In a lot of these races, if there's a 4% swing in Pennsylvania, Oz wins. There's a lot of these races where a 4% swing changes it.
Where did you get the 1 out of 25?
I just made it up.
Oh, okay. So because I like in 2010, most people didn't care about him. Like it wasn't a thing. And so I'm not saying that the journey away from Trump is not a difficult one, right? Like I'm not saying that for someone who has supported Trump and has backed him, I'm not saying that like moving on from him is going to be easy. I think you and I agree with that sentiment.
Right.
Like that sentiment I agree with. I think the point I'm making though is I think a lot of people think they can't do it. Like there's no way it's possible. They're not going to be able to. And I disagree because I think people forget why they got on the Trump wagon to begin with. I think they forget how MAGA began.
And in a little aspect, we're talking out of school here because we aren't passionate enough that we have signs in our yard and we're going door to door and then our guy lost the primary and we're like this.
Right.
So I'm only speaking about those people who are like, this is the guy and he is the chosen one and he is our leader. And then he doesn't get it. There have to be some of those people who stay away.
But haven't we agreed that that group is smaller than we realize? It's like the squeaky wheel.
It would be interesting. Is it 1%? Is it 2%? It's not 50%. We know that.
Sure.
But in some of these races, just a couple percent makes it really interesting.
I just keep going back.
So we would have to ask someone who is really like
a diehard. I just keep going back to the idea that I think that the only thing that Republicans would hate more, if you're a Trump supporter, the thing you would hate more than Trump not getting the nomination is the idea of someone on the other side winning. And I just keep coming back to that. And I just can't imagine that is not like, because like you and I agree, they are like extremists is a strong word, but they are the people all the way to the one side.
No, I get it.
And so I just can't imagine that those people are just going to be like, oh man, my guy didn't get nominated. I guess you guys can have it. But like, I just don't see it.
But there are people, like more people voted in the Trump-Biden election than ever before. And it wasn't just because more people got, because people were fervent on one side or the other.
Now, all the pushback I just gave you, I fully agree with the point that you made.
No, I get it.
I mean, if in core they're able to basically make the decision for the Republicans sooner rather than later, I mean, that is a huge win for the Republicans moving towards 2024 that the Democrats may not be thrilled about. But it's this weird thing of, here would be the irony of it, is throughout these midterms, you and I were very hypocritical about the Democrats sponsoring and promoting and giving money towards radical campaigns on the right, how ironic would it then be that if they lost 2024 because of basically abandoning the strategy that worked for them in the midterms by indicting Trump and making sure he couldn't run?
Right.
I mean, it would be
good point.
It would be really, really ironic. And I'm sure that's not even what they're thinking about. Well, I don't know. Maybe they are, though.
Maybe they are.
It is. I will say this. I have never seen more people talking about 2024. And it's random people in my life, like people that never talk about this stuff. And I mean, they are already talking about 2024.
Yes, it is. It is fascinating. Well, a lot of times you get this far out and you have no idea who the nominees are. Mm-hmm. And there's two on the Republican side. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes out of the woodwork, it would be, but it's,
there's a couple, but yes, it would be. I mean, to get through those two,
you would not go to Vegas. In Vegas, it's Trump, DeSantis, or the field, sure. And you would not take the field.
No, you would not.
So anyway, it's interesting.
I wanted to ask you this about the Mar-A-Lago thing. We didn't get to talk about it before the show, but there's reports coming out. Part of the reason, because I told you how they essentially created a special committee. It's being passed off. There's a lot of stuff now with appeals. The court's going to hear a special master review to determine some of this stuff. Over 22,000 pages of materials that were obtained and what it means and what's going to happen. One of the reasons that I heard that it was being passed off, I heard that they're having a hard time determining the intent of why he wanted to have these documents. And so that is part of the reason for the special committee. That is part of the reason why they're having trouble deciding what's going to happen. Because essentially, intent, it's the difference between murder and manslaughter, right? And so they're having a hard time intending. Obviously, if you're on one side, obviously he could have sold them off. He could have been colluding with another country, all these different things that they're suspectable of. But on the other side, they're having a hard time proving that. Like essentially what they're saying is in the initial investigation, it sounds like this is just a guy who basically just didn't want anybody else to have this stuff, throwing a fit and put it in a bunch of boxes and put it somewhere where nobody else could get to it. And so the intent aspect of this is going to be very, very fascinating to me because clearly, I think you and I both agree, he took stuff he shouldn't have took. Whether or not what you're going to do with it is probably going to dictate what they decide happens. Like the punishment, how harsh it is, if there's any punishment at all. I think it's going to come down to intent, and if you can actually prove.
So, with the intent to distribute,
I guess what I'm saying is,
it's like a drug deal, possession with the intent to distribute.
Yes,
is different than possession.
Correct. In so far in this first investigation, the thing that the media is not reporting is the struggle to find intent. And so I'm curious what does that? I know what it means. But moving forward, if you can't prove intent, can you indict him? Like, what is the indictment?
If you have possession of one of the things that'll come out because there's all the details, and supposedly his attorney was told a long time ago, like he needs to send these back.
Yeah,
and he was just like, no, I'm not. And so there's an aspect of, oh, you accidentally took my jacket.
Right.
Can you bring it back? Mm-hmm. And
no.
After a while, when you're like, no, now you're in possession of stolen goods because you had the opportunity to return it and you just never bothered. Sure. So it is interesting. I don't think the Dems want it to happen.
Correct. Well, not now.
I don't think so.
But here's my point about intent and about we spend so much time talking about this stuff. And I'm not saying it's not worthwhile. I love having these conversations. The question to me then becomes did someone die in the cold because you didn't give the coat back, or are you just being a jerk? Because being a jerk technically isn't against the law. Do you see where I'm going with this? And by the way, I'm on the record of saying to you, his biggest issue is he refuses to cooperate with anybody. I'm not sitting here trying to defend him. Like I've said before, he is an asshole who will not cooperate.
That's why I think at his daughter's wedding would have been fascinating to see. Because I can imagine any dad at his little girl's wedding, she's like, Dad, go get this. And he's like, okay, and there he goes.
But I think you can see why some people get frustrated with it because you have this investigation. They can't prove intent. And so now there's another committee. And now that committee's going to try to like prove intent. And then they'll probably have another hearing and that will try. So you can see how for some people it's kind of like, listen, he clearly has the documents, he clearly has the boxes, but it's not enough. Like you guys want something deeper. You want this intent of like, and so it just gets dragged along. So I guess what I'm saying is, as someone who has come on here and said, I fully understand why people are frustrated with Trump. He will not cooperate. He clearly has something in his possession he shouldn't. But you can see the other side of it where people are kind of like, oh my gosh, like they already had an investigation. They couldn't prove what he wanted to do with it. So that's why they're having trouble pushing this stuff through. And yet now we're going to create another special committee. And now they're going to try it. So I get both sides of it. I guess is what I'm saying.
I do.
I think, honestly do.
And certainly I'm nowhere near a Democratic strategist, but I could see their party for the last however long, like Trump indictment.
Kind of like,
and now that it's coming, it should be like there's times that at football practice early in the season, a fight breaks out.
Yeah.
And sometimes the coaches are like, no, let's let it go for a little bit. Okay, now we'll step in.
Yeah.
So I think the Dems would be smart to let the Republicans fight this out. Well, and again, not that they have any control over it, because the Department of Justice is supposed to be neutral, and we think it's neutral, and we assume it's neutral, but be that as it may. So anyway.
No, it's a very, very interesting point that you brought up. I wanted to mention this again, too, because we talked about the FTX fallout in the Bahamas. I just said this to you before the show. For those who don't know, FTX, crypto exchange, filed for bankruptcy. They're now going through trying to sort it all out. One of the things that they're having a discussion about is apparently the guy who ran FTX and his parents, and I think his girlfriend, and a couple of other people that were in the company bought $121 million worth of property in the Bahamas. They are now trying to claim like his parents bought this person bought that, and they're trying to claim that essentially it is not FTX money that was spent.
Of course, because everyone's parents has $121 million laying around.
So here's the newest part of this, and we didn't get to talk about this the first day, the first time we talked about it. Have you heard of effective altruism? Have you heard this in the news? Have you heard this come up? Okay. He is this Sam Bankman-Fried. He is using, and I want to make sure I have it right, effective altruism, and he's using it as essentially why he did what he did. He's making the argument that you make as much money as you possibly can, because then you can do as much good as you can possibly can. And that was essentially what this whole thing was based off of. To me, it sounds like crap. Like, to me, the idea that you're only making money to then be the decider of what is altruistic, like to decide what is right versus what is wrong, to me, it's like maybe the biggest power grab somebody could possibly have. And my 10-second reasoning is because you are the one deciding what is right.
No, I do get that.
Like the idea, like to me, effective altruism almost sounds as if what you're implying is, I'm going to go get as much money as I possibly can because nobody could possibly do better with it than I can.
No, I mean, I do get your angle. I'm sure their angle of it is better than me making all this money and just hoarding it. And if I don't make it, somebody else is going to make it. At least I'm turning around and doing some good with it.
Okay.
But I do get your side. It's not as angelic as it may sound.
To me, it almost sounds like a fool's errand. It almost sounds as if even just saying out loud, even when you just say, I am an effective altruist. Is that how you would say it? Altruist? I think that's how you'd say it.
Altruinian?
Altruvinian? Yeah. We'll say
if you were from the country of Altruvia, you would be an altruist.
Like if I came to you and I said, just me saying to you, like, oh yeah, I'm an altruist, like I'm an effective altruist. Just you saying it out loud, aren't you already losing kind of like the point of it?
I mean, yes and no. It'd be like if Bill Gates said that, and he's got all this money. Yeah, he's going to choose where it's going to go, but he's done a lot of good.
Sure.
So I mean, there's pros and cons, but I do get it. I do get what you're saying.
I don't know. It sounds like a cop-out to me. I can't wrap my head around the idea that he decided where this money went, and then when it's gone, when it's mishandled, it's kind of like, well, I subscribe to effective altruism. Like I thought this was the best place for the money
I
to go.
can't believe
But
that
the
they're
best place
saying,
for the money to go was in $121 million in the Bahamas properties, and the best place.
but I didn't
and
even
your
pay for
girlfriend's
it.
research.
It's not mine. It's my mom.
Right, exactly. Like I don't know. It's wild.
You got a dog? No, it's my mom's dog. You blew 120 million. No, my mom did.
Right.
My mom. She went to the grocery store. She got milk. She got gas, and she bought $121 million in bonds.
I don't know. Sounds shady to me.
A little bit.
It sounds shady to me. So that was all. I wanted to update.
Speaking of shady, what are we talking about next?
Whatever
Do you want to talk about Qatar?
Yeah. Well, no, we don't have to. Go ahead.
So I was flipping through the channels the other night and watched the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. Did you see it? Any of it?
No.
I saw the last two people.
You'd be shocked to know this. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame did not come up on my algorithm over the last 2 days.
Well, I was flipping through the channels because some of us still have real TV, even though you don't.
Okay.
So the last two people, I almost said indicted. The last two people inducted were, and when you think Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Judas Priest got in this year, which they should have been in a long time ago, but like rock and roll. The last two people in were Eminem and Dolly Parton. On the show, on the broadcast. And I was riveted. I am not a hip hop. I own Eminem's greatest hits. I don't think I own any Dolly Parton, but I am a classic rock, hair metal guy, and who dabbles in other places. I was riveted with both of them. The whole Dre is the one who introduced Eminem. And then Pink introduced Dolly Parton. Did you know? I mean, they just went through the number of hits, and he talked about his overdose when he almost died. He told his daughter to cover her ears right now. Dolly Parton, I had heard this before, and this is just a stupid little tidbit too, that back when Bon Jovi was still essentially nobody, one of them, either John or Richie Sambora, was still living with his parents. And this guy, Desmond Child, who's this classic songwriter, they came over, they wrote You Give Love a Bad Name in the morning, got pizza, and then wrote Living on a Prayer in the afternoon. And in one day, they wrote these two, which launched. That's the legend. According to this, and I guess it's right, it's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Dolly Parton, which I didn't know she was a songwriter. Like, she wrote a lot of her stuff. Kenny Rogers had said he didn't write any of his stuff. I don't think. I think, there are bands who are just, people who write and people who don't. Dolly Parton wrote I Will Always Love You, which was the Whitney Houston remake, which is the #1 selling single still of all time, I think. She wrote that, and it was her own song first. She wrote that song and Jolene in the same night. Wow. And Jolene is like one of the country staples. It's one of the top 10 country songs of all time. And oh, by the way, she wrote the greatest selling song in one night. Yeah,
it's incredible.
That is and it was 1972. What is she? She was in her 20s. So anyway, I just found that.
It's incredible. Obviously Dolly Parton is getting up there. How old do you think she is now?
70. She said how long. She was married to her husband. What'd she say? 50. I think she is late 70s.
Her legacy is one. I always get nervous about Dolly Parton because I never want it to fall apart. Did that make sense?
She is the Betty White.
I'm not saying I want Dolly Parton to pass away, but like a part of me is kind of like, I just want Dolly Parton to pass and everything to be intact. Because when you actually dive into what she has done for like women, what she has done for education, what she has done for country, like
she's one of the great people of the world. She is almost the Mother Teresa of.
It is unbelievable, and a part of me is just kind of.
You think it's too good to be true?
No. The opposite for me, it's just kind of like don't say the wrong thing, don't do the wrong thing. Like I'm just keep nailing it, just stick the landing. Like you're so close and you're almost there. And I don't know. You don't get nervous about people like that?
Not her. I think she's so genuine and so lovable.
I agree.
And Pink had this quote and they showed through her whole life, back to when in the 70s. and her hair was big, and her hair was bigger, and sometimes it was just like this little body surrounded by all this big hair.
Right.
And one of her great lines was, "It takes a lot of money to look this cheap," and so like, because she always had the makeup, and she didn't apologize. She's like, "I liked it," and she
Yeah.
But just the songwriting and some crazy number. Like she's had 42 albums that charted. Like 42.
Yeah.
And even it's like, wow, she's old. She's been around a long time. Like one a year?
Yeah.
Like how many songs can the chick write?
Yeah. No,
So,
some people have it. Some people, it's just a gift.
It is unbelievable. And yes, someone compared her to Betty White, that she is so universally lovable. And talented. And Betty White, like, was different. She, even in her old age, her comedic timing was brilliant. Like Betty White was incredibly talented, just as long as being like America's like favorite grandmother or great grandmother, as she got to. Like Dolly Parton, I had no idea she wrote that many songs.
Yeah,
and it was awesome. So if you get to see, and in between, they went from because they closed the show with Jolene.
Okay.
And everybody's on stage singing with it. Rob Halford, the lead singer, the rock god from Judas Priest, is singing the chorus of Jolene with her. But Pink was on stage, and all these people were on stage. Eminem, Steven Tyler from Aerosmith came out and sang with Eminem a little bit. And but Bruce Springsteen and John Mellencamp did. Didn't they do Great Balls of Fire? I think they just did, and they did a duet together this year on John Mellencamp's latest album. Okay. But it was so cool for an old guy like me that you're sitting there, and it went from Eminem, and Dre introduced him, and then Eminem's, and then they got Steven Tyler was on stage. I'm trying to remember. The red-haired guy, young guy, who sells 1 billion albums.
Ed Sheeran. Ed
Sheeran came out and played with him, with Eminem, and they're like back and forth, and then all of a sudden they stop, and then Spring, because they did the what's it called, memoriam, when they talk about the people who had passed. And that's Springsteen and Mellencamp. They sound good. They're both 70 whatever.
Yeah.
And then they go off, and then Dolly Parton, and it was Pink, and it was just, so I didn't see the beginning of it. Okay. I know I'm trying to think of who else went in, and I'm blanking, other than Judas Priest, because I remember him. But it was really neat. If you watch it, if you only get the last half hour, 45 minutes, no matter what your genre is, if you don't find it enjoyable, then you just don't like music.
Yeah, nice. I'll look it up.
It was cool.
Sounds like it's right up my alley. I'm going to find it.
Anyway, yes, the Eminem stuff, just the whole who he is, and as a white kid, and and it was just that he offended everybody. Like coming out of the gate, he just. It was really, really neat.
I don't know if Eminem could happen today.
There's a lot of people like that they're right for the time.
I think and by the way, like Eminem hit my timeline, and Eminem's hit. Do you know? So I was 15,
that was your era.
I was 14 or 15. And I remember, like, you had to do whatever you could to get the album, because obviously your parents weren't going to get you. I mean, he is right in my wheelhouse. I love him. With that being said, I just don't think he even gets off the ground today.
Another thing about him that when his daughter, and they show, I'm trying to think how old his daughter would be now, because this was a while back. She was in the homecoming court at her high school, and him and his daughter's mother are famously divorced, and all that stuff. When for homecoming, he stayed in the building, and he watched it on closed circuit TV, because he was like, this is her moment, and I'm not going out in the crowd to take away her moment.
Sure.
So they hooked it up, and he came to the school, and he was right outside. There's the stadium, but he would not go outside because he didn't want to be a distraction to her moment, but he wanted to be there.
I think the other thing that's unique about Eminem, and like maybe Dolly Parton's a little bit like this, but see, like with Dolly Parton, like with Nashville, I feel like there's a lot of people that claim Nashville, and Nashville claim them. Eminem in Michigan, it is like the king. It is, he can't go anywhere. They had video of him trying to go to the Detroit Lions practice, and practice just stopped because the employees and the people that are like from, there's nobody bigger. There's nobody better. There's nobody bigger. And so I think Eminem is very unique where a state or a place really, like, where other people are from, but that place may not be like, that's the dude. Like Eminem in Michigan, in Detroit, like, he is the guy. Like, there is nobody
like
else.
Prince was to Minnesota.
A little bit. Absolutely.
No, I get it.
And like, this is a bad example, but like, everyone knew Will Smith was from Philadelphia, right? But like, people in Philadelphia,
born and raised,
right,
on a playground. Wasn't he born and raised on a playground, or is there a comma in there?
But people in Philadelphia, because there's other people from Philadelphia, and it's
Rocky Balboa.
That's what it is. Gosh, you're ridiculous.
I'm just trying to help.
Yo, you're helpful. All right. So yeah, so there you go. So that's the other unique thing about him. I'm done.
I was just going to say something else too while you're talking about Detroit and he loves Detroit and Michigan. And then you said something, and I was too busy trying to be a smart ass, and I forget what I was going to say. But it was intelligent. It was real. Oh, I know what I was going to say. If you had to pick one, 8 Mile or Straight Outta Compton.
Are you just saying movie? For me, it's 8 Mile. Straight Outta Compton's the better movie, but for me, 8 Mile is again that whole timeline. The timeline of Eminem for me.
Oh, because it meant more to your life. I understand.
14 to 24 was basically his biggest run, and so for me, there's nobody bigger than, if you went through my Spotify right now and you can like save songs, he's probably the number one saved artist on my Spotify.
Because this is not, I have NWA's greatest hits too. I have their greatest hits. I probably don't know where they are, but I owned them both once upon a time. This is not my genre. It is not. I love both of these movies. I've seen them both multiple times. Yeah. If they come on, if I'm flipping through and find it, I just ride it out.
Sure.
And that's another one. If you, no matter what I don't care if you listen to country, if you listen to rock, if you listen to opera, if you don't like these movies, I don't see how you couldn't, with the stories behind. And I know Eminem's isn't as real as Straight Outta Compton's is, but it's a little bit real. It's the gist of, and I think they're fantastic.
No, I agree. I'm with you. Anything else before we head out today?
Yeah, congratulations to, who was it? Saudi Arabia, I think it was, with the biggest soccer win of the World Cup thus far.
Yep, over Argentina.
The U.S. tied Wales.
Yeah, did you watch it?
I did not. I heard we scored right away and then never scored again and gave one up late.
This is, if you want to take 2 minutes, so we lost because of a penalty kick.
I thought we tied.
Right, well, I'm sorry, we tied, but the reason we didn't win was because of a penalty kick. 80th minute, maybe a little after, foul in the box. It's very apparent as non-soccer Americans. There's two things going on here, and when they're side by side, it's very conflicting. On one side, everyone's like, "What an idiot! I can't believe that guy tried to get the ball. Why would you foul in the box? Like, we're 10 minutes away from extra time. Like, this is like, it's right there for us." And then they also said the idea like, Wales hasn't scored a goal since 1950, I think was the stat.
Since Shep was a pup.
It was a long, long time. So on one side, like, you have this idea, but then I'm listening to people talk about it, and I get it. Like, they're excited. Like, we're about to win a World Cup match. On the other side, I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, like, we weren't even in the World Cup 4 years ago.
Right.
We're not really good at this. Right. Like, we think like we want to be, but like, we're not. We're kind of on everybody else's playground. Like, we're invited, but this isn't really our realm, if you get what I'm saying. And people reacted to this 1-1 tie, this draw, like it was the end of the world. Like, and I'm looking around and I'm like, you do realize we weren't even invited 4 years ago. Like, we weren't even good enough to be here 4 years ago. And now you guys are like losing your mind over a draw. Like, it can't be, listen, I wanted to win, but it can't be both ways. You can't have it both.
Oh, in sports it can be.
It
can be. You either win or you're the worst people ever.
I'll put my cousin on blast a little bit because it was funny. He was obviously upset. He was like, we should have won, never should have fouled. And I was like, no, like you're not wrong. Like you're right. And he goes, well, now we're definitely not getting in because Wales will probably score like 3 goals on Britain and I'm thinking to myself, like, so let me get this straight. You're upset because Wales scored a goal on us, but apparently they're good enough to go score 3 goals.
Yeah, they're going to score a hat trick next time out.
I'm like, let's everybody relax. Let's all calm down for a second. Like we got the draw. Let's see what happens, and we'll go from there.
You know what else? I'll never forget this. And I've seen baseball coaches who really, really struggle with this because baseball, a lot of times, you get in all these other sports where in football and basketball and soccer and with the constant movement sports, the coaches have a lot of interaction all the time. In baseball, a lot of times, the best thing the third base coach can do is put his hands in his pockets and just let the hitter hit.
Okay.
And we're not running, we're not bunting, we're not doing anything. We're just going to let the inning play out. And I remember these obnoxious guys down when I was in Maryland, and some of them loved the University of Maryland. It's just like here. People love Penn State, or if you don't love Penn State, you probably hate Penn State. You love Notre Dame or whatever. And these guys are watching a Maryland Duke basketball game at the same time. And Maryland came out, and it was like, whatever it was, 12-3 right out of the gate, and they're burning timeouts and all this stuff. And they're all talking, and the guy just looks at him. He goes, let the game unfold. And so for right now, for Americans, you can speculate what Wales is going to do against England. There's also a time you just got to step back and just let it unfold. Sure. And let's see what happens. Yeah. But yes, it is very hard for people to do that.
Especially when 4 years ago, you were watching other countries.
Yes.
There was no game for you to watch 4 years ago.
I mean, let me tell you, from a Dallas Cowboy fan, when we coughed up a fourth quarter 14-point lead and lost in overtime to the Packers, the sky was falling. A week later, we're the greatest team that's ever laced up a pair of cleats.
Sure.
So just like sometimes you got to sit back and let it play out. And then
I'm with you.
Actually, more than sometimes, most of the time.
Yeah. No, I'm
so
with you.
When do we go again? Do you know? Like probably Friday, Saturday?
For
the
Friday.
US.
We're Friday.
Okay.
Yeah. I believe we're Monday, Friday, Tuesday. So we already played our Monday game.
Who is next?
Friday.
Do you know off the top of your head?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know which one of the two we're playing in the pool, but no,
hopefully not Saudi Arabia, because they are on top of the world.
What a disaster for television too in America.
It's on Black Friday.
That's a good thing because think about Monday. Think like if you're in the World Cup, think about what your Monday just was. And listen, I understand there's a whole world out there watching soccer. However, a lot of advertisers, a lot of people are in America. Most Americans didn't see a second of the World Cup on Monday. I did not see a second. That's what I'm saying to you. So you have all these people like the World Cup, everything else, game ends, it's 4:30, and all of a sudden 5 o'clock, everyone's getting out of work and going home. I mean, it's not a great. And listen, you're
right. From that aspect, Friday's way better.
That is, and listen, the TV thing, like the viewership thing, is like 1% of everything absurd with FIFA and Qatar, and I mean that's a whole other.
Well, and depending on what time they go, because again, this is the event for soccer and trying to all this stuff. On Saturday, or is it on? Oh no, the game you said soccer's on Friday because Michigan. Ohio State is Saturday, so they missed that. That's a good break.
Sure.
And then Auburn, Alabama is also Saturday, which is a great rivalry, except Alabama's going to beat them by 40. So
Nick Saban is in support of expanding the playoff, in case you were curious.
Of course he is. Of course. How about,
in case you were curious.
Did you see Dion is a name that's being tossed around for a lot of jobs now?
Yeah, I mean, they're all going to – for him, it's just a question of which one.
Where.
And where. And if he wants to. You and I have talked about this a lot. There's something to be said about recognizing he's in a pretty great spot.
He is.
I'm not saying he won't leave or that he shouldn't leave, but I think people are like, well, of course, why wouldn't you take the Auburn job? Or why wouldn't you? And I'm like, because until you spend a day in his shoes, you don't realize that he's kind of the king of his world right now.
He is.
Yes.
And this would be a fascinating conversation with lots of successful coaches, whether it was, Paterno certainly would have had NFL opportunities if he wanted them along the line. A guy like Frank Girardi, who had so much success at Lyco and what other opportunities he had along the line. And for the guys who are maybe it's family, maybe it's stability and comfort, or you just feel a connection.
Right.
But because he's having what is he 10th all time in division? I don't know. He's got 1 billion wins. He was there 1 billion years, won 1 billion games, and had an unbelievably successful career.
Yeah.
And there are those guys that appreciate what they have.
Sure.
And because the grass isn't just because the place is bigger and shinier and glitzier doesn't mean it's better.
There's also, I've always said this too, like, and we've talked about this with like being employees or like whatever it is, whatever aspect of your life it is, family, work, whatever. You just can't, the price tag of appreciation is always undergauged. It's always undervalued. And so you have to understand, like, as Deion Sanders right now, when he walks around Jackson State, everything is thank you. Everything.
Right.
Win, lose, draw. Everybody is so thankful that he has decided to be a part of what they are doing. The moment you leave there and you go to a Power 5 school or a Division I school, it's not there. It's not going to be the same. It isn't. You're going to meet people and you're going to run into people that it's not going to be an appreciation. It's a job and you are filling it.
And you better win.
And so I'm really fascinated to see what he does, because I'm sure he's ambitious. He's obviously competitive. So I'm sure these jobs are very attractive to him, but he also has to know when he wakes up in the morning, how many people get to wake up in the morning and every person you run into is just so thankful you're there.
Eminem.
They can't, you think so?
In Detroit?
In Detroit, but he's not always in Detroit.
That's a good point.
So I don't know.
No, I do. I
think
totally get it. It is something to appreciate. No, obviously he could go somewhere else. He could be,
But it'd have to be on the same level or below. Any job you take in the Power 5, that aspect of your life, it's not there. Those are jobs being fulfilled, and you have criteria to meet.
But if
there is no
if he
appreciation.
meets him,
yeah, but like, okay, let me put it to you this way: Nick Saban met him, and there's a lot of people in Alabama right now that are like,
oh yeah, now all of a sudden he's the worst coach ever.
So that's the point.
I'm with you.
Like it is the moment you take.
They will turn. They will turn. And it would be interesting to be in Alabama right now and hear how dumb Nick Saban is all of a sudden. Yeah. Because they lost twice.
I think Deion Sanders can do it. I think at the right program, I think he's incredibly valuable, and I think he'd be successful. I'm looking at it more of his perspective.
No, I agree with you 100%. Yeah. Oh, yes. He could. I almost want to see, what do they say, South Florida. Mm-hmm. I think they're 1-10.
I'll say this, though. If you were ever going to take over a Florida program, like,
now's the time.
Like Miami, like, listen, Florida's not awful. They're not great. Miami's not great.
Didn't Florida just lost to Vanderbilt?
It is, like, if you were ever going to try to take over that state at a program, I mean, it's not a bad time to kind of.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
It's not a horrific idea.
He's number one. The two things. He's charismatic enough, mm-hmm. and he's smart enough, mm-hmm. and he obviously cares.
The other interesting thing about South Florida would be, and I think I'm right, I think they still play in the stadium. I think they still play at Tampa Stadium.
Oh, do they really?
Yes.
I know it's a huge college.
Okay.
They have like 40,000 students.
Last I knew, they don't have their own football field. They play at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Stadium. Okay. So, like, I would imagine the facilities are good. Lots of room for, like, advancement and for, like, I mean, it's not. But see, Miami played in the Orange Bowl, and that wasn't always a great thing. Though.
No.
Because it was hard to sell it.
It was too far away. It was ways from campus. Mm-hmm. It was, it's tough.
No,
it is interesting because Pittsburgh's a smaller place than some cities, but for the Pitt football team that you have to go downtown. Penn State, you just walk. Right. As big as Penn State is, 100,000 stadium, kids just walk right over there to the game. You can't walk to the game at Pitt. You have to bus.
Right.
And that changes things.
Sure.
So anyway, yes, there you go.
It does. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Sincerely, we hope you all have a great holiday. We hope it's spent with friends and family, lots of turkey, whatever it is you may be eating. We will be back next week. We're having guest week, essentially. Lots of people lined up. So thank you to Weis Markets for being the title sponsor. If you're still looking to grab your last second groceries, whatever you may need for Thursday, for the weekend, be sure to do it at Weis Markets. Thank you
I
guys.
just learned this because I was in Weis Markets this morning. Your gas and go bonus points,
Okay.
I think they expire. I assume everyone's expire at the same time. Mine expire Thursday.
Okay.
So I got to use them by Thursday, which I will do.
There you go. It's good timing.
It's good timing.
Thank you guys for watching. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see you guys next week.
See ya.